Hey you guys, it's Dani. Today we are back for another of the reviews and recitations, and I'm really excited to do this one. It is the Horror Tarot deck and guidebook. This was illustrated by Abigail Larson, who also did the Dark Wood Tarot, which is phenomenal. I love her artwork so much. So this is an Insight Editions deck. I said Editions a deck. Insight Editions deck, and it actually does have some scenic minors, and I think they actually did a really good job with this deck considering a lot of the fandoms that they've been touching. This, since it is just like horror themed, we have more monsters, we have a looser, I guess, a looser copyright issue, a looser subject, where they were able to truly kind of do what they wanted with this deck. So I find that it is probably one of the better Insight editions that I've seen because there were no restraints. So it's not so much a collector's item versus a cool horror themed deck. So we will take a look at this deck together. So here we have the Horror Tarot deck and guidebook. Again, this is by Insight Editions. We have some really pretty embossing and foiling on the text. Now, when we get into the cards themselves, I got a little bit to say about that. But we'll get there. Okay, so this is illustrated again by Abigail Larson. This is written by Aria Gminner and Minerva Siegel, who is constantly doing stuff with Insight Editions. On the back, we get kind of a sneak peek of what's going on, and beautiful little circles of art all along the box. This is a two-piece. It's got a really cute inside. Comes with a really nice guidebook. It just says horror on the top, and it is full color pages. We have some readings in the back, some spreads, and about the author and illustrator. Our majors get full pages, and we'll go over these a little bit more. I think the front is just kind of like basic stuff, you know. But it is a really nice guidebook. So this is, it's not in order, I'll put it in order. This is the box here, the bottom of the box. We have a string, fits in nice and snug. I will say I love the presentation and I really like the boxes and stuff. We have basic cardstock. This is the back. Very plain and simple. Nothing too crazy. Fully reversible. We have spider webs. Very spooky. And then we have the cards themselves. So I will put these in order. We will take a flip through of the cards and listen to some poetry as we do so. And then after that, we will talk a little bit more about the cards and deck and shuffling and all that good stuff. Today's reading is from Something's Off About Mary by Katie Lynn. The child came from nowhere, it seemed. One moment, Frank was alone, watching an ancient can of baked beans heat over the campfire, and the next the girl was there, standing at the tree line. Frank jolted to his feet when he saw her, his rifle in hand before he even really thought to pick it up and aimed it at the young girl. She stood stock still, and Frank wondered how long she had been there that way, watching him. "What are you doing, girl?" he boomed. She did not react, only continued to stand silent, her arms wrapped around herself. She was dirty and ragged-looking, but her pale skin beneath the dirt almost reflected the firelight. Frank looked wearily around, keeping a sharp eye and ear for any movement in the woods around him. For another long moment the two remained in a standoff, the fire crackling between them. Frank began to shift uncomfortably before he lowered his weapon ever so slightly. "Can I help you?" he called out in the same gruff voice, his breath coming out in clouds. The silent girl took a shaky breath and nodded almost imperceptibly in the vague light. Frank noticed then the way the girl was trembling in the cold, her slender shoulders bare beneath the ragged tank top she wore. Frank nervously looked around again, sensing no other presence than the girl. Against the gnawing feeling in his stomach, Frank lowered his rifle, his grimy hands shaking slightly. The girl's eyes were on him, locked into every small movement Frank made as he shifted uncomfortably. "Are you cold?" he asked, a touch of concern in his voice despite his pounding heart. The girl shook her head in the same half motion as before, and something about the movement unsettled Frank. But she was only a child, he told himself, trying to shake away his instincts. Frank eyed her hesitantly, dropping his gun and sitting, slow and unsure, back on the log he dragged over. He waved for the girl to come to him, his guard still up for the moment. She came to the fire gratefully, nearly running to reach out and warm her hands over the flames. Frank watched her all the while, trying to make sense of the strange child before him. "So what hole did you crawl out of?" he asked. Her shiny eyes flicked up to him, but made no sign that she was going to answer. She was beautiful beneath the grime, Frank noted, wide eyes and smooth porcelain skin. It was dangerous to look this way in the world. "Not much of a talker, I see," he drifted. He was beginning to relax slightly. "She's just a child," he told himself. "A skinny one at that. I tell you what, you tell me your name, and we can have dinner," he said, tapping the can. It was the girl's turn to look at him with an untrusting eye now, as if he had been the one to turn up at her camp in the middle of the night. Still, she gathered her breath to speak. "Mary," the girl said shortly. "Frank," he nodded, and they returned to their silence. He poured out a small plate for the girl and passed it around the fire to her, keeping the can for himself. She took it in her slender fingers and placed it on her lap. The two ate in silence, or at least Frank did. Something was off about Mary. She only seemed to want to push the beans around in her plate, though surely she had to be hungry. "You sick or something?" Frank said gruffly, wiping a bit of food from his beard. "No, I just don't usually eat this kind of stuff," she said in a low, almost melodic voice. Frank stopped mid-chew upon hearing her speak, surprised not only by the amount she had spoken, but by the stark contrast between her sweet voice and the rough appearance. He swallowed hard. "Well, that's too bad," he said, dipping his spoon back in the can, feeling a bit annoyed at the girl. "You can't be too picky in this life," he said, and continued to eat. "I picked you," she said quietly. Frank wrinkled his brow. "You picked me? What does that mean?" he asked, looking up through the flames. His heart nearly stopped at the sight of her. She was on her feet and grinning at him with a wide, sinister smile. Her teeth gleamed in the light, white as pearls, sharp as knives. "I mean, I chose you," she said in that sweet, unsettling voice, her eyes dark against the light. Frank nearly choked and reached for his gun. When he righted himself not a second later, he nearly jumped from his skin. The girl was standing beside him, somehow having reached him in complete silence. "What the hell?" was all he managed before the girl was on him. Frank hit the ground with a powerful thump, his can of beans spilling out beside him. His eyes went wide as he felt her razor-sharp teeth sink into his neck. He struggled and screamed and gripped her skinny, freezing arms and trying vainly to detach from the girl. But it was no use. Mary stuck to him with superhuman strength. Still, he fought hard, kicking and writhing while she bit into him like an animal. With each pull of blood the girl took, his strength was sapped, and he felt himself fading from consciousness. He fought until he could see no more. His arms fell to the ground around him. Only then did she release, and Frank watched her through his blackening vision. She looked down at him with that unnerving smile of his, her pearly white teeth stained red now. His veins were lit on fire. He wanted to writhe in agony, to scream, but he couldn't make a sound, couldn't move. He had no body, but he could still feel the pain. There was nothing else. Until a voice echoed around him. "You'll feel better soon," it said. He did not believe it. He screamed in silence for a time that was impossible to judge. It could have been years for all he knew, until by some miracle the pain began to fade. It left him slowly at first, and then all at once, until there was nothing but a memory. He felt the endless darkness quiver and began to fall apart around him. Suddenly, an orange light was thrust upon him, and Frank woke with a great shuddering breath. He found himself on the ground where he had died, either a moment or a lifetime ago. He could not be sure. The only thing that he was sure of was Mary peering down at him, her sharp mouth drenched in red. That wicked grin still spread across her face. "Thanks for dinner," she laughed. Okay, so let's talk cardstock for a second. This actually has a really good shuffle to it. They're stiffer cards. They are thicker. But they are very, how do I describe this? They feel like non-laminated, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't know if you guys can tell, but it's like, it's not a matte lamination. It literally looks like you would have printed it on the cardstock, but it's like matte cardstock. Like, there doesn't appear to be any sort of lamination. Now, the back looks like it more so than the front, but that may be an illusion with the way that the artwork is designed, because this doesn't feel like it has any sort of lamination on it. And I feel like this might hold, especially if you're in a place that has humidity. This might cause this deck to maybe warp and bend a little more than it would if it had some sort of lamination, if that made sense. Let me grab another one of their decks. Okay. So here's The Nightmare Before Christmas. And yes, it has like a matte lamination to it. I don't know if you're going to be able to see the difference really in it. Like, does that make sense? Do you see like there's a lamination on this one? And this just looks like it's printed on like matte cardstock versus having a lamination over the image. So I'm wondering if that's going to affect not the longevity. I think that that's going to be fine, but how do I describe it? Like if it gets wet, it's ruined. Like, even a drop, I think, would warp the paper because there's no lamination. Nothing. So, I don't know. I'm kind of, like, curious to see how it's going to age because of that. I mean, it's beautiful. The artwork is beautiful. The way that it's set up, it feels great. But I do wonder about that because I don't know if I've seen a deck do this before where it just looks like printed on cardstock paper and punched out, with it being so thick and designed this way. I don't know. It's kind of strange. As for the artwork, that's what drew me to this. I am in love with Abigail Larson. I love the way that she illustrates. I love the fine lines and the I don't know, like sharp edges. It is just phenomenal. That's what drew me here. Now, I will say, I find that there's a lot of vampire references throughout this whole thing. Not that it's the only monsters. Obviously, we do have our robot overlords, some from different cultures and different themes. We have Mothman, so we have cryptids in here. We have mermaids. You know, we do have quite a bit, but like I feel like it is a little vampire heavy, if that makes sense. The only suit that I will say is Pippish is the Pentacles versus everything else. Like everything else is very scenic. Pentacles and maybe the Cups, but like Pentacles for sure are the most Pippish in the bunch. Everything else kind of flows with a more scenic view of what's going on. I don't mind this because I feel like it was done really well. See, like a lot of vampire references, but we do have like alien and zombified. creature, Jekyll and Hyde. It is beautiful. I love the Sleepy Hollow reference. I do love the references in here. I actually did use this for a friend of mine, and the reading went really, really well. And I was like, we share a love of horror and horror movies. And so when I was reading for her, I was like, okay, so I know that you won't care. I'm like, I think if I would bust out a horror deck for anybody else, it would be like, what are you doing? I was like, but I just want to try this out, so I want to use this deck with you. And even though it had nothing to do with horror themes or anything scary or anything of the sort, it did read really, really well. I felt like it, even though it's like such a particular genre, if you're looking just to have those vibes but still get a really good reading without being super influenced over the fact that it's supposed to be horror, this does a really good job. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it would be super specific. I thought halfway through I was gonna be like, this isn't working. You know, it just needs to be themed, right? But it didn't. It really didn't. It worked really well. And I know some people can definitely separate that and push that aside and be like, this is just what I like to use, so I'm going to use it no matter what the topic is, and just kind of use it for everything. You know, I do and I don't. It depends on my mood. Sometimes I am just in the mood to use a deck, and other times I'm like, but if it doesn't feel right. And that's mostly when reading for other people, if I'm being honest. For myself, I'm a lot more open and free to just like use whatever deck I'm like currently infatuated with, or whatever vibe I'm currently going with. Right now is definitely spooky season vibes, so I've been kind of keeping to these sorts of decks right now, and I'm living my best life no matter what, at least for me, right? As for reading for others, again, I feel like it would be very specific depending upon what kind of clientele, you know what I mean, that you use things for, or the situations. That's the one thing with kind of really pop culture or really themed, like heavily themed decks, is like, that's what I run into, but that's just a personal thing for me, whereas like I feel like it's more for me and less for everybody else. But can we talk about this Temperance? This is probably one of my favorite images in this whole deck. I love this so freaking hard, and I don't know why. I think it's just like the murky water and the stillness. It's like in a space of like pause. Like you know, like when you kind of see those images of people going into the water, and it's like when they stop going down, but before they start going up, there's this like middle weightless kind of space that they're in for this moment of time. It's like the perfect catch. You know what I mean? Like the perfect timing. This image is like that perfect timing. I don't know. I'm obsessed with it. And maybe because it just looks like murky water that I'm used to, it just like really like hits home. So anyway, that's one of my favorites. Another one would probably be the Fool. I love this Fool so much. It's like a survivor running out of the forest or into the forest or away from the person that's after her, and like getting caught by someone else. Like that's what it reminds me of. Like, you know those was it Texas Chainsaw, where the girl runs out of the woods and flags the car down, and then it ends up being somebody from the farm? Oh my gosh. I mean, they definitely do it in the Goonies, right? Like totally different vibe, but like when Chunk escapes the Fratellis and he flags somebody down and he's like, hey mister, can you bring me here? And it ends up being one of the brothers. It's kind of those vibes, but way spookier. And like just the look of what is supposed to, I guess, be like blood staining, the way that it is done and the way that this is illustrated. There's a couple more. I mean, look at this. It looks like soaked up, watered down blood. It's amazing. Look at that. Look at that. I love the artistry of it. Is it perfect? No. But is it what I was wanting? Yes. I mean, I am one of those people who, like, I mean, it could have been gorier. Like, when I think of horror, I kind of want to see that campy, gory, bloody horror, which I know is not for everyone. I mean, even this might not be for everyone. I mean, you know, everything is not for everyone. But it's like I sort of wanted to see maybe a little more gory images. Like, not distasteful, but maybe a little more gory. Versus just kind of like hints of this kind of blood pattern. But all in all, honestly, I'm not mad at it. I've actually thoroughly enjoyed this, and I've been enjoying my time with it. I'm like finding different things and noticing different things kind of every time I use it. Creepy kid in the 6. Ugh. Anyway, there is one other thing that I kind of want to talk about before we go, and that is the stamping of the card names. I'm gonna be honest, especially laid out, they are almost impossible to read. It is very, very small, and because it is punched and foiled in this way, when it sits on the table, I want to see if there's a way that I can, like, let me kind of get the lighting. Like, when it sits on the table, this is kind of what you see, where it's just really hard. And then I hope I'm getting it from what I'm seeing through the viewfinder. It's very obscured. It looks like black, and the red is not bright enough to really see. You see that there's an indentation, but because it's foil, it's also hard to see. So I just don't think, in a practical design choice, that this foil and wording was the best choice. Maybe if it was foiled in white, or if the background was maybe not black, or if the words were bigger, I don't know. But regardless, I don't think this works very well. For the numbers, it's fine, but you still run into the same thing. You know, it's just really hard to see. I think because the font is so small. And so, I don't know. I just don't find that works super well. But otherwise, I'm just enjoying it for what it is. And right now, it's just all about the spooky vibes. And I'm digging it. And this is actually one that I think really did well. It was really done well. So, let's go ahead and let's do Mothman. And read from the guidebook. This is going to be the 8 of Wands. I don't think there's really much as far as explanation of what's on the card. I was just in the Wands. Okay, here we go. As far as like what's in the card or who's pictured, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see. So the 8 of Wands, upright. Events happen without much time to prepare. The 8 of Wands symbolizes a sudden change in affairs, such as needed to travel on short notice, a sudden business opportunity, or life taking a turn in a new direction. Reversed. In reverse, the energy you put into something didn't get you far. An opportunity is cut short, a situation cannot be worked out. That's okay. There will be another chance for success, or there will be other chances for success. So we have a very basic, doesn't even talk about the art, very separate sounding minors. Let's take a look at, because I'm going to be honest, I glanced at it. Okay, there's the Chariot. I glanced at it, but I really haven't read much of the guidebook just yet. So let's take a look if there's anything tying the majors to the actual artwork. Okay, so the Chariot. Could this be your last ride? Stop or go, the choice is yours, but there's no going back. The Chariot, like a horse-drawn hearse, has a clear destination. Deliver its corpses to their grave, or else. So we do get a little bit, but then, again, I feel like it says, upright, no matter how difficult the road, stop at nothing to reach your goals. When fear threatens to take over, hold on for dear life until you arrive at your final destination. Reversed, one wrong turn, and now you're headed in the direction you did not anticipate. Regain control to steer yourself back around. Do it before it's too late. So it feels like maybe the majors were taken more into consideration, but even this could have been written, like the upright and reverse meanings could have been written beforehand, and then they just kind of popped in kind of something that kind of corresponds with the card. I guess because it just sounds really generic and really basic. And with something like more artistic as this, it's like, I don't know, I like to know. I like to at least say, like, hey, what's on the card? Who am I seeing? What is this maybe based on, or anything like that? Because some I wouldn't know, you know? So, anyway, it's just, like I said, very basic guidebook. Really well done. Hiding in the shadow spread. Exorcise the demon spread. We have our little demon here. Deal with the devil spread. So there we go. The Horror Tarot. So I hope you've enjoyed this look through Horror Tarot. Let me know what you think about this one. I know we've had a few mixed reviews. I showed this to the Mystic fam right when I got it. And like I said, like flipping through initially, like I told them, I'm like, at first I felt like I feel like I'm sounding non-enthusiastic, but I really do enjoy this deck. Because at first I was like, you know, I was hoping to see this, or I was hoping to see that. So I'm really curious to see what you guys think about it, especially if you don't have it in your hands yet, or if you do, what were your first impressions? Because that was my main first impression, was like, this is really beautiful. I thought I was going to see a different array of kind of horror figures. I felt like it was a little more vampiric heavy than I thought it was going to be. But all in all, after using it for a while and kind of noticing all the other creatures and figures that are shown, I've developed a stronger love for it. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts and, you know, all that good stuff. So make sure to leave some comments down below so we can discuss this. And like I said at the beginning, all the information for everything is going to be down below, as well as how to join the Mystic fam, where to find me on social media, my Etsy shop, how to book a reading with me, 3 Fat Readers, and all kinds of good stuff. Just check out down in the description below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not subscribed, if you want to subscribe, and we'll talk very soon. I'm sending you all my love. Mwah! Later, Gators.